Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining today. So I'm going to put this on to full screen in a minute and run through the presentation. Just to let you know that we've rehearsed this several times. We do have one slide in this presentation, which is just a little bit sticky. So when you press forward, it likes to wait about 5-10 seconds before we do so. You will notice when it arrives, but just to give you a head up that that's like going to occur. So I'm going to just click slideshow from the start here. There we are. So pleased to be able to talk on this subject. And the reason being is that a lot of work is going on large infrastructure projects out there. Occupational hygienists are getting increasingly involved, but my gracious, my friends, do we need you involved in this whole area of occupational hygiene on large infrastructure projects for reasons we look at. So what I want to do today is want to give you a bit of background why, why I would encourage you to get involved in this area, particularly if you're in the consultancy field. Just to outline a little bit about the landscape of health risk in construction, why construction happens to be the perfect storm when it comes to trying to manage occupational hygiene, where you can get involved, and what it looks like day to day. What can you expect if you're trying to get involved in a large infrastructure project and the like? What can you expect of that? What is the consensus at the moment for the way it's done? Now, emphasis isn't the point there, but the consensus. This is not a prescription, okay? You may have better ideas on how this could be done. We're all ears. And we've got a case study from Alice Binden, who's looking after the occupational hygiene management at the Hinkley Point C construction site, the largest construction site in Europe, and a very well-funded site and great commitment to occupational hygiene there, and we've benefited from that. And then we're going to have another case study provided by Manal Pachigar. Now, Manal Pachigar is looking after the occupational hygiene function at HS2 on the Euston site, ably assisted, and we've benefited enormously from the experience and expertise of Jenny Armstrong with helping us on that. So into the subject. Here is a website which you might want to dip into, the Government Major Projects Portfolio. Well, you see a range of projects coming up: hospitals, schools, prisons, power stations. The HS2 project is on there too. But here's something might be interest to you. 68 infrastructure and construction projects listed on there last time I looked, which was just a week or so ago. Total whole life cost 433 billion quid is being put towards this. Average project duration is about 11 years, and the average cost is 6.4 billion. Pause there for a second. So if you are, as a hygienist, are looking to get involved in one of these projects, there is a good chance that you might be engaged with a consistent workload for about a decade. Yeah, got to be worth going for. Now, those are the public projects. The private projects, I understand, and this was a quick Google ChatGPT type inquiry here. 2026, 15 billion quid's worth of either broken ground or reached a major milestone in 2026. So it's all to play for. However, in construction, as you might be aware, compared to other sectors, construction is quite immature with its engagement with occupational health and hygiene. There are things which seem to be quite novel to construction, which other industries have been doing since the mid-20th century. And the health risks that we see in construction, I won't go through all of these, but just to mention that when it comes to cancer caused by a range of exposures that you can see there, construction is believed to account for around about half of all occupational cancers. Now, asbestos, of course, plays a major part in that, yeah, but nevertheless, it's still a huge problem here. And construction's also overrepresented in COPD, obstructive pulmonary disorder. Not forgetting all the issues we've got to consider about with fatigue and psychological risks, which are particularly special to construction too. So to deal with those things, here's all the kind of diseases that can occur to construction workers. If you want to stop these diseases from happening, then we got to look at what's going on at the workplace. It's occupational hygiene that breaks the chain between what's going on in the workplace and that resulting in some kind of a disease outcome. Now, I mentioned about construction being the perfect storm. Take a look at this and just like ponder the complications of managing hygiene on these projects. Project structure, you will have possibly. Well, if it's a major project, you will. Client, principal contractor, tier one, tier two, subcontractor, sub-subs, man in the van, and all the rest of it, all of whom you're trying to get to work to a particular standard of good occupational hygiene practice. And the folks engaged in those various organizations are predominantly male, with all the kind of testosterone that goes along with that in terms of like a culture, tend to be a little bit older. Average age is 47. So we've got a bit of chronic disease, a higher instance of chronic disease as well. Now here's some key things. Migrant workers, itinerant workers, they may only be on site for a few weeks or a few months, and then they're off. So if you're trying to manage their occupational health and hygiene, I don't have to spell it out. You're with me, aren't you? It's difficult to maintain good occupational hygiene practice, training, awareness training, when the workforce is coming and going so quickly. These folks tend to have poor lifestyles. When they're not on site, they may be in multi-occupancy accommodation, and they might fall into addictive behaviors with like drugs, alcohol, gambling, things like that. They tend to have poor contact with the NHS if they do suffer any ill health. Maybe they've got no sick pay as well. So you combine these two things with the way the structures way the projects are structured and the kind of workforce you've got a difficult job on your hands. Other things that are reasons why construction sites don't tend to do health like they do safety. Some of them we all know. Well, we've got the latency issue. It takes a long time for the disease to appear, and so people get exposed on the day, go home in the evening, and they feel like they've got away with it. The intervention's not perceived as easy, particularly because a lot of folks think occupational health and hygiene, that's the domain of the doctors and nurses. But we know it's occupational hygiene that breaks the chain, and you don't need to have people taking blood, people blowing into bags and all the rest of it to control these exposures. But perhaps crucially for construction, the positive outcome of your occupational hygiene intervention is not immediately obvious, as it would be with a safety intervention. And that's particularly acute when it comes to construction, when a package of work may only be gone for 2 or 3 months. And let's get real. And it's so easy to get away with it, isn't it? With not taking the dust control or the noise control measures seriously. Because after all, 2 or 3 months, we're out of here. And so have my workers. I'll have a whole fresh workforce maybe in 6 to 12 months' time. So given all these things, we're going to go straight now into a case study. I'm going to hand you over to the wonderful Alice Binden, who's looking after the occupational hygiene team at Hinckley Health. We have a full-time team of 6 hygienists down there, and there's a scattering of hygienists amongst the other contractors as well. So Alice, if I can hand over to you, and if you could just tell me when you want to click the slides forward, and I will go. Thank you.
Yeah, so hi everyone, thanks for having me here today. So as Calvin said, I'm just going to give quite a brief overview of how we manage occupational hygiene here at HPC. Flick forward. So, I mean, as we're all well aware, that occupational ill health presents a significant risk to our workers, but it's also a significant management challenge, particularly on these large and complex projects. We're likely all aware, there are many reasons for this. I mean, we've got the temporary nature of these projects. Perhaps there are some legacy designs. So, perhaps the design for a site like this was created some 20 plus years ago, maybe when those ill health effects weren't as readily known. Of course, there are also those production drives and pressures, and also quite often here that high workforce turnover, which can make that continuity of education and control really difficult. We'll flick forward. So I think this is where there we go, the slide worked.
That was the sticky slide, yeah.
That was the sticky slide. So although I'm slightly limited here, I thought I'd just give quite a brief overview of the project itself. So it is in fact the first of its kind in a generation. So the construction of these European pressurized water reactors makes it one of the largest and most complex construction projects in Europe. We have over 15,000 workers here every single day, so 24/7, made up of a multitude of contractors. So we have a number of tier ones, and then within those tier ones, we have tier twos and tier threes, all of varying sizes. Now, as Calvin has already alluded to, this is a burgeoning workforce, so predominantly male, who may have ingrained in traditions in which historically health was not really a key focus for them. So this scale and diversity really creates a unique challenge for occupational hygiene here. So really, how are we managing those long-term health risks across such a varied workforce? Flick forward. So our core occupational hygiene team here is 6 of us, so 5 technicians and me, who provide both day and night shift coverage throughout the week. Our hygiene department forms a really core part of that Hinckley Health multidisciplinary team, who see over 3,500 patients every single month. Now, forming part of that Hinckley Health team really gives us as hygienists a unique advantage, as we're able to see issues from multiple perspectives. So, for example, if somebody comes in for the health surveillance appointment with one of the health technicians, or they come in for a walk-in treatment with one of the nurses, they're able to come to us directly for advice, or if they need to escalate something, for example, oh, there's a dust issue out on site, a number of people have just all walked in, which just allows us to take, start those investigations early on. So this process is called ORCA, but I'll let Calvin talk to you about that one later on. So we're allowed, we're able to get to that root cause, be alerted to any trends early on, and it really highlights that holistic approach to health that we take here at HPC. I'll just move on. So at the moment, we're in a phase where we're having a real mix of civil works, but also mechanical and electrical works, which provides that real plethora of occupational hygiene risks for us to manage. As you can imagine, we have a huge amount of welding works taking place. However, at the same time, we still have quite a lot of concrete activity. And of course, there are chemicals such as epoxies and isocyanate coatings, which just further adds to that challenge that contractors already have with coordinating their works together when perhaps they're working in a building all at one time. Again, so although the length of the project gives that real potential for some long-term exposures, that large workforce turnover that we often see really presents that challenge for, training and education that you provide means you're constantly having to do that. Just move forward. So day to day, as a team, as Calvin will again speak about later on, that continual presence of the hygiene team and technicians is so key on a project like this due to its size and dynamic nature. So for just some context to that, the team here, the technicians, they'll easily conduct over 600 monitoring activities every month, focusing on all of the risks across the project. So predominantly being reactive, conducting that real-time monitoring. So although we will always have those planned monitoring activities such as gravimetric RCS or dosimetry, on a project like this, it's really never uncommon for works to be moved suddenly or changed due to changes in priorities or programs. Similarly, works may only take place for a really short amount of time, which makes that real-time monitoring work that the technicians do really important. Now, we see such value in being reactive. So, for example, if a member of the health and safety team or a supervisor has a concern in that area, we're able to provide that rapid response as the event is occurring rather than hearing about it later on. So, as well as that collaboration between construction teams and coordination, we have a really good working relationship with other hygienists in those tier 1 companies, as well as the health and safety teams in the PC, which really allows for that support with worker engagement, informational activities, and support with those inspections. Just move forward. So following this, I believe one of the real key successes and drivers of the management of hygiene here on site is the fact that that leadership is so embedded within the principal contractor, the PC. So this means that at Hinckley Health, we form part of that PC structure, which allows us to hold contractors to account. So we can embed those expectations directly into site standards. And of course, without the support of our construction director and health and safety manager, which we certainly have here, this would be far more challenging. So this really feeds into the fact that as PC, we embed those occupational health and hygiene requirements into our site standards. For example, we stipulate the need for occupational hygiene resources when a contractor reaches a certain size, which makes that occupational hygiene delivery a core requirement. This also means we can audit those contractors against our own standards. So we have standards for occupational health, hygiene and well-being, as well as specifically for dust and fume. The compliance of these standards gets scored every single month, so we can constantly see how the site is measuring up against our own standards. So of course, if and more likely when some issues do arise, for example, concerns around a welding activity, this information is shared widely across the project through working groups and contractor forums. We've really found that this transparent reporting and shared learning has been really key to improving those standards across the supply chain. So for example, now we have new contractors coming to site, or perhaps contractors who have been here for a while but are picking up some new work, they're coming to us asking for advice before they even begin. So they may say, oh, I know we had an event in this building, we're going to go in here. What can we do differently? What equipment do we need? Can you come down and look at it with us before we begin? So it's really showing that maturity that's beginning in the project. Next slide. So as I've discussed already, HPC is really leading the way in equalising how health and safety is really perceived. So I think it's key to say here 2 years ago, March 2024, we introduced some life-saving rules, as you can see on the screen here. So previously, our project life-saving rules were predominantly safety focused, but now we have these specific long-term health focus rules that really gives us that platform needed to look at health and hygiene in the same light as safety. Again, as Calvin has said, we're very lucky here to have the funding and the backing to provide that upskilling to our workforce. So a couple of examples of this would be our occupational health awareness course, which is run by our GP and Calvin here. So this is a one-day course really focused on supervisors to give them that understanding of why they need to implement those control measures. And we have found this to be really effective. So if we've had an issue on site and we found that that supervisor hasn't been on that course, once they've attended, they seem to understand, and that's made quite a large difference. Similarly, more recently, they've begun to run the M200, so basic principles course on site, so slightly differently in that this is more aimed at health and safety advisors and some union representatives, which I think we've now trained nearly 100 people. It's really positive, and it's actually generated quite a lot of interest in people looking into a career in hygiene. So you never know, Hinkley Point may be making some more hygienists in the future. Last slide.
Just waiting for it to forward a minute.
Oh, another
it's
stop.
Got a bit, yeah, let's try that again. I have clicked the button. Just bear with me.
Okay, I'll go on. So yeah,
there we go. There we go.
So in summary, whistle stop tour there, but I think the key learnings from Hinkley is really that combination of the integrated health services, that strong coordination, those standards that are embedded, and that transparent learning. We really think that HPC is really tangibly demonstrating how hygiene can be embedded into these large projects.
Marvelous, excellent. Thank you for that, Alice. I greatly appreciate it. So just now as I'm going to go through for the next quarter hour, 20 minutes or so, I'm just going to brief through and unpack some of the stuff that Alice has described there in some detail. But as we go through this, you'll see some of the things that Alice has been talking about, that it'll all start to look like there's a bit of a pattern in how we're approaching this. And you'll see this in Manal's case study, at the end of the presentation as well. The same themes starting to emerge. But let's start with this first. Here's the project structure. My friends, where are you likely to be engaged on this? Well, occupational hygienists are currently engaged by the likes of Balfour Beatty, Lang O'Rourke, and people like that, and that's very healthy. That's great to see. So a hygienist might be engaged full time by the contractor, or otherwise, as is the case in HS2 or HPC, embedded into the occupational health delivery for the project. There are broader opportunities for hygiene consultants across the board, really. You will find some consultants engaged by the client, particularly at the health by design stage and all that. But for my friends, get out there, phone those tier ones, tier twos, make sure they're available, are aware of the resources that are available to them to meet the demands of the projects. It makes sense, doesn't it, that at the very start of a project, when you have the concept of what you want to build, that is the point at which you're most able to make changes and to reduce risks. And the cost of doing so at that point of the project is least. As you go from concept to design and construction phase plan, the CPP, so the ability to make those changes starts to reduce, and the cost of retrospectively making changes increases, and to the maximum when you're actually on site breaking ground and doing the construction work. So it's at the design and construction phase plan really where we have the opportunity for experimentation, reflection, creativity to try and get rid of those health risks at source. Prevention's better than cure. So this is just an example of what this might look like. Okay, early engagement with occupational hygiene is what you want. This is an example, a very brief snapshot from a design risk register. And the idea is that you're at concept design stage and you have your design risk register established there. And then that should feed down to something similar for the building risk register. Looks at what's going on building by building. And as you go from design risk to building risk, so you're looking at the opportunities to eliminate the health risks. And then the building risk register feeds the site risk register. And at every step, you have an opportunity to eliminate the risk prior to build. Fairly standard format on these things. What you want to do is develop health risk indicators in a kind of a drop-down menu thing, which somebody can just click on and choose the various health risks, accompanied by your hazard elimination options, which just serve as an aid memoir and a checklist for the designers. Quick thought on design. Eliminating hazards, eliminating health risks by design. What you could do is go on to ChatGPT or something like that and say, like, what have I got to do to design out health risks in construction? And it'll do, perhaps for professional hygienists, a worryingly good job of telling you where you can design out health risks. But it tends to be these kinds of things you would have heard before. Minimize cutting. Avoid welding. Use a lighter weight thing than a heavier weight thing, or whatever it happens to be. And the kind of thing where, if you were sitting across a table from somebody and just shooting from the hip, you'd probably come up with these ideas for eliminating health risks. But one of the things we've found is that you need to consider what the control measures are going to look like several years from the start of construction. So on that photo there, you can see the complexities of the construction around the nuclear core reactor. And there are around about 2,500 rooms around that reactor, all of which will need welding in them. And you're going to need to put some LEV in there. Now, the question is, has anybody thought about where the site footprint is going to be for your LEV plant? Because if that hasn't been thought about, you've got nowhere to put your fan filter unit from which the LEV will go. Where are you going to put your noise enclosure? Where's the plumbing going to come from for your water suppression, and so on? So you've got to think about like the services and the logistics of enabling hygiene control measures to be put in place, as well as trying to eliminate them at the start of the job. I'd suggest that all these things should be considered as part of the Design for Health agenda. But if you don't do that, you've got the impact of LEV then on site access, slip strips, ducting penetrating fire barriers, obstructing emergency response, etc. Crucial thing that Alice has mentioned so far, and Manal will mention that the similar kind of thing, is that we need to be developing project standards. Here's an example of one that NMB's produced, the Occupational Health, Hygiene and Wellbeing Standard. That's going to spell out the expectations of contractors across the board. This is what we'll be expecting from you with respect to good occupational hygiene practice. This is what it ought to look like. Here are the roles of people who will be looking after this. Here's the responsibilities that contractors will have and that the principal contractor will hold for managing this. Spell it all out so no one's in any doubt about how it's going to be done. And then from that standard, you can have other standards like emerging. I mean, here there's one for hand-arm vibration at NMB. There's one for welding fume, hot metal cutting, dust, and things like that. Now, once you've got these standards in place, that then gives you the ability to form an audit program where you're asking good questions of the contractors to gauge their compliance with these standards that you set out at the start of the project. And those audit outputs you can then include in your health and safety performance indicators and show them on a dashboard. There's just some example of the contents of a standard. Roles, responsibilities, health risk management. How are we going to go about it? Occupational hygiene and COSH, health and well-being. Drugs and alcohol testing and monitoring occupational health and hygiene performance. What's that going to look at? What's going to be most important to us when we're doing that? What about education and training? What's our commitment to that going to be? All backed up with a series of appendices of standard forms and arrangements that people can refer to. We've applied an occupational health, hygiene, wellbeing maturity index at not just like the HPC site, but several construction projects that we've been involved with. We've asked these questions of these 6 key areas of in an organization's capability and wherewithal to do health like they do safety. That's what we are looking at here. And the key areas you'll see are leadership commitment, planning prevention, risk awareness, fitness for work assessments, monitoring, control of exposures, health promotion and well-being. Now, if all of that, and if the structure of this looks spookily similar to the BOHS health industry management tool, well, there's a good reason for that. And of course, the BOHS high management tool has got good pedigree, and we've borrowed from that. So what I'm saying here is this approach has got good DNA. But here's an example of a round we did this back in 2019, and you'll see the benefits that it gives you. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tier 1 contractors on this particular project. And we've scored the different contractors, and you'll see that tier 1A, 86%. So they're the kings of the castle. And we've got tier 1D, 69%. So they're the dirty rascals. So by doing this, you're able to do some comparative metrics from one contractor to another. And if somebody at 69% is saying, well, get real, this is construction. You need to understand, mate, how it is in this industry compared to others. And then you can say, well, hang on a minute, this tier 1 is scoring 86%. Doesn't need to be 69%, does it? And then you see another pattern emerging with where people score highly and where they don't. And this pattern is not unusual. Fitness for work assessments, health surveillance, and that kind of monitoring. The kind of traditional approach to occupational health scores very well, 90%. People are well used to a nurse turning up, but less so an address of occupational hygiene. And you see planning and prevention scoring 61%. So that tells you, where the gaps are and where you need to focus your efforts. And as I say, you can push this down the supply chain as well as applying it to tier 1s. So coming back to health risk management. Now, we were very fortunate at Hinkley Point C that I was preceded down there by Dave Rogers back in 2017. And Dave very wisely introduced the health risk assessment concept to the construction site. I'm hoping getting this story right, but as I understand it, this approach hadn't been taken in construction before, and Dave was very familiar with it, brought it into HPC, and it's worked very well indeed. I'm always open to be educated and corrected. That was the first application of HRA into a construction site, but thank you, Dave, for doing that. So it's a kind of like a health risk profiling, health risk assessment approach to managing construction. And we're limited on time today on how to do health risk profiling and all the rest of it. But can I refer you to an excellent article that Rob Gillespie has written for the BOHS Exposure magazine, which came out just a few weeks ago, which unpacks all the granular detail you'll need for risk profiling as a tool for occupational hygienists. Now, in construction, those HRA tools need to be pretty light on their feet because construction environment is moving fast. Now, this is like a sort of one of the outputs that you might get. Now, there's various ways of skinning the cat, as you might know, different ways of looking at HRA. But what we're doing here is that we're sitting down with the contractor well in advance of the works, maybe several months in advance of the works, and we're talking to them about what they're doing and how they're going to do it. And you break down their activity, their operation, and their site plans into the various similarly exposed groups. We don't have time today to rehearse what an SEG is. I'm presuming this audience will be familiar with that. So we've broken it down to SEGs, and on the left-hand column, we have our agents of concern to which they may be exposed. And by using a risk weighting matrix, we've drawn up this little heat map here as to where the health risks are most likely to arise and where we need to draw our attention. So from that, straight away, this is several months in advance, and so we're already in a position to start thinking about what kind of control methods are we going to need, how are we going to plan and manage those, where can we eliminate a health risk, and so on. But where there is a residual risk for whatever agent of concern it is, and then we can plan out, again, well in advance, what kind of occupational hygiene interventions, action plans we're going to need. And also coming out of this, you're able to identify the health surveillance requirements for each SEG. So I'm not going to linger here, but from that then you can distill out your occupational hygiene action tracker and your health surveillance schedule, and you can use these schedules and trackers to develop health and safety performance indicators as well. Now, some of those health and safety performance indicators might include monitoring. Please hear me here, okay? Reflect on what you think monitoring might be delivering for you on a construction site. We know that occupational hygiene monitoring data varies enormously. I hope that you're familiar with the log normal distribution here, okay? And now we have the luxury of collecting 30, 40 samples from a particular SEG doing a particular activity. We know we're going to get that log normal distribution. But in construction, I suggest you're going to get a very high GSD in that data, very high geometric standard deviation. That's going to affect your UTL 9570. That affects your determination of well compliance. And so when you're collecting handfuls of samples and trying to make a determination of well compliance, because of that wide variation on the data, you've got to be mindful about what this is actually delivering for you in a pronouncement on compliance with a well. You might find it's easier to target like an activity, a particular activity, rather than try and work with defining a similarly exposed group. Now, in places like HPC, they've got a dedicated woodworking shop and a dedicated metalworking shop. So we do as much off-site fabrication as you possibly can. Easy to control health risks there. And we've got a nicely defined SEG there with guys working in that. Well compliance, it's possible. Elsewhere on site, we've got short duration works, intermittent, unpredictable activity, highly variable environment. It's windy one day, dry the next, wet one day, and so on. Okay, one day you're working in an open field, next day it's a hole in the ground, and then someone's put like walls around it and a roof over the top. Everything changes week to week, month to month. Also, monitoring data tends to be collected, inverted commas, when it's happening. Yeah, so you could have someone come along to see an activity, but if it's not, they'll tend to call the hygienist when it's actually happening. The rest of the time, exposure could be, very low indeed. But the data might lead to misapprehensions about the level of day-to-day exposure. So please carefully consider what you think the monitoring is delivering for you and plan it properly. What's important for us, I'd say, now we do monitoring. You heard from Alice, and you'll see that we are putting monitoring to good use. But we think that if you're going to elicit action for worker health protection, verification, assurance is possibly more of an issue for you than a regular monitoring. Now, many occupational hygiene programs fail to control exposure because people don't implement the control measures properly. And a lot of that can be dealt with verification insurance as opposed to running samples. So, for example, I had an occasion where a stonemason's outfit on a construction site showed me the RAMs, said we're going to do a dusty job, but we've got LEV and we've got a dust enclosure. And we've got people wearing their RPE as well. The Rams looked fantastic. What can possibly go wrong? Well, we haven't got time today for me to sit here and say what draws your eye, folks, as being an issue here. LEV, tick. Dust enclosure, tick. Wearing RPE, tick. Okay, so from those points of view, they're ticking off the list. But you don't need to come along here and run a pump to, to improve this situation. Okay, verification, assurance, and monitoring perhaps can be done more effectively, like with other means. Quick aside: when you're going around the site doing your boots on the ground bit, okay? Now Alice has already mentioned this. It's very, very important to get the optics right. You need to be visible on site. Boots on the ground. Put on the charm offensive with your workforce. Regularly tour the site with the health and safety people. Take in every opportunity you can to train and mentor people in the principles of health risk. And the top tip is don't put health and safety on the back of your high-vis, folks. Put occupational health and hygiene. You will. What we find is that you will get a better buy-in from your workers with chats if you do that than if you put health and safety. If you stick occupational health and hygiene, people will come alongside you and say, "Oh, you're health and hygiene, are you?" Yes. Oh, well, I got this bit of an itch, and I got this. Do you think I'm going to be okay? I'm a bit bothered because at the weekends, and you get this kind of talk coming out. Okay, you'll find that people are much more will open up with you much better if you've got health and hygiene on the back than health and safety. So be visible, use simple qualitative checks, be light on your feet, use direct reading instruments and the like, record uncontrolled elevate exposures of high potential events. HPC have done very well on this, that if a tier one contractor identifies a high potential event, there's a lot of urgent address to that. But if but Hinkley Health, if they identify a high potential event, then there could be a sanction for the construction manager, and that puts a bit of seasoning into getting action for high potential events. All the outputs from this include them in your HS PIs. So here's an example of something we're doing, quick and easy check. I'm walking around the Hinkley Point C site. Sweeping brushes are banned on the site, but I'll swear to you, sweeping brushes, I think, are biological agents, because it seems to me that it only takes a little bit of water, a little bit of nutrient, and the right temperatures, and they just seem to grow. Even if there's one left around the place, they just seem to spread all over the place. So I came across a brush in one part of the site. No one's claiming responsibility for this brush, and so this is what we do. I gather the workers around. Whose brush is this here? Brush? What brush? Oh my goodness! Look, guys, there's a brush. Where did that come from? So you say, okay, guys, do you want to play along? Do you want to play a game with me? Play with me here. Do you want to do that? Yeah. What have you got in mind, boss? And I said, I've got this lamp in my rucksack. I'm going to stick it down here. I want you to grab that brush, all right? And I don't want you to sweep vigorously. I just want you to move across the floor, and we'll see what we get. And what I do, I flick the lamp on and off. Now, they're all gathered behind me. They're all watching this going on, okay? So now you see it, now you don't. Now you see it, and now you don't. And then you say to the guys, are you with me about the amount of dust that comes off? Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. And you've got no problem, have you, with that dust lining your lungs, have you? That's okay with you guys, is it? Or fair play, see what you're seeing, mate, and all the rest of it. It has that bit of drama. It has that theatre. They're behind me now, and they're nodding, and they get what I'm saying. And I know full well when they go and get their coffee and or go to the water cooler, they're going to be chatting about what they've just seen. It's cheap. It's easy. You can video it, and you can feed that video back for training purposes, such as we're doing today. Then we have direct reading devices. We have all sorts of devices out there. I'm conscious of the different brands, so I got TSI, Casella, and Trollex represented in these photos here. They have their place because you need to be quick on your feet in construction. You haven't got time to wait a week, 2 weeks for a sample to come back. You've got to be able to act in the moment, so you can put these to good use. But they do come with a health warning. Now, in the tunnels here, you can see a Trolex unit being put to very good use indeed. So there's excavations of the tunnel going on down the end here. Is dust coming back up the tunnel? Well, the Trolex will pick it up if there's any issues with the water suppression or the ventilation or whatever. And then a little alarm will go off. And it data logs over time as well. That's great. But we had one day when Alice walked up to a particular part of the site, and on the daily briefing whiteboard outside this particular section, it said the dust meter is showing that the levels of dust are okay today, so you don't need your RPE, folks. Now, as being seasoned hygienists, you'll see the problem with that straight away. Okay, so you do have to educate the client, educate the contractors about where these direct reading instruments are useful and where they are not. One happy thing we had happen. We had a construction supervisor walk through the door in the office one day, aerated because he had a little dust meter in his hand, similar to the Casella unit here, and he said, this unit is showing me these really high levels of dust. We're all going to die, and we think that you hygienists people need to be on site now and do something about it. And we looked at the dust meter, and he was recording micrograms per meter cubed, not milligrams per meter cubed. And so we were able to provide some reassurance there. Now, it's easy, isn't it, to think about that, like, oh, gosh, that's the problem, isn't it? You put these dust meters out, you don't know how people are going to interpret it. But I put it to you, this is a thing to celebrate. We're sitting there thinking to ourselves, a construction supervisor just walked through, a site supervisor just walked through the door handling a dust meter. He owns a dust meter. And not only that, he's taken a reading and he's been concerned enough to come and find the hygienist and do something about it. What a score. That is marvelous. So a bit of education is required, but we will take that. This is our interaction with occupational health and our ORCA scheme, occupational related conditions analysis. We keep track of these cases. So a worker presents at Hinckley reception, got a rash in his lower back. Nurse takes note of that. A few hours later, another worker arrived, same area, same job, rash on his lower back. Okay. Now, when we get these presentations, the way the occupational health is set up is that we capture these occurrences, and the information goes straight to the occupational hygiene team to investigate the workplace. Okay. So the clinicians, they treat the patient with his rash, and the hygiene team goes out, and we did find the cause of this, and it was to do with some backpack spraying operation. The backpacks were leaking a bit, and the liquid in the backpack was raised pH. It was quite caustic, and that was giving rise to the issue. So that's sustainable occupational health. Okay, treating the workplace with the same rigor as we treat the individual. Now, Alice, like has mentioned this one, and Manal will cover some of the coaching stuff that goes on in Euston as well. But we have been doing this monthly delivery of training at Hinkley Point C since 2018. The conversation on site, we began to notice around about 2021, 2022. That the conversation on site was changing with respect to people's attitude towards health and hygiene. I hope we're not deluding ourselves, but we like to feel that there was this regular monthly delivery of training to everybody, from the project director down to the scaffolders, to the union guys, to everybody's been on this course and continue to do so. And then, in recent, I mean, you cannot fault EDF NMB's commitment to occupational hygiene and health on this site. Hats off to Rob Jordan, Angela Young, Sean Ryan, and all these guys who are representing our interests there at the highest levels. We've already delivered about 9 M200 courses across the piece, with about another, I think it's about another 6 or 7 to go this year. Training all sorts. A lot of the people who come on the course then want to go on and pursue their careers in occupational hygiene and learn more. They're all asking about M500 courses and the like. We've also rolled out the CCHRC courses on site, and we've also started delivering the P304 COSH just to up the game, raise the bar on how COSH assessments are done across the site. So that's like just unpacking some of the things of which Alice was like alluding to. I'm going to pass you over now to Manal Pachigar. So Manal is the, as I said, occupational hygienist with at the Euston HS2 site, working with Jenny Armstrong over there. And I'm going to leave it to you, Manal, now to just run through this. The reason why we include this program is that Manal is only on site for several days a month at the moment. It's a world apart from the situation at HPC. And so we thought this would be a great case study for many of you, your engagement will probably be just a few days a month. And so I'm just asked, Manal's very kindly agreed to present what that has looked like. So if you're starting from scratch and you've only got a few days a month, how does that go? So Manal, over to you. Whenever you say, I shall click the button and forward the slides.
Awesome. Thank you, Calvin. Hi, everyone. I'm Manal Pachigar. I'm the Occupational Hygiene Consultant supporting the setup of the Occupational Hygiene Program at Mace Dragados Joint Ventures. So that's MDJV in short, and it's at Euston. I work with Jenny Armstrong at MDJV. So Jenny Armstrong is an occupational health professional and founder of Construction Health and Wellbeing Limited. She specializes in supporting construction organizations to move from reactive occupational health to prevention-led health risk management. Jenny currently acts as occupational health lead for Euston Station, where she oversees the occupational health strategy and works closely with MDJV and its supply chain to strengthen compliance, improve risk management, and embed a more proactive approach to workforce health. Next slide, Calvin. Thank you. In this presentation, I'll be providing a project overview of the MDJV HS2 work site at Euston and the components of the hygiene program. The program strategy focuses on assurance and has three key components: the health risk assessments, the assurance, and the occupational health measures. Next slide. So Mace Dragados is the construction partner building the new high-speed 2 railway station in Euston. The image here shows the map of the site. There are three key work areas highlighted in three different colors here. So you can see TSS, which is a traction substation, in green, and the Maria Fidelis Old School, which is in blue, and the utilities area, which is highlighted in red. Next slide. So a bit more information on all three of the areas. So TSS, the work focuses on building a new traction substation and exhumation operations. That's also shown in the picture at the top there. So the TSS includes a 20-meter deep box with a 90-meter long tunnel, which supplies power to the trains and stations at Euston, and primarily the Northern Line at Euston. Then we have the Maria Fidelis Old School, which is a refurbishment project where the school is being converted to a welfare site and office space for HS2 staff. There is a connecting building created as a skills center, which opened in January 2024. It delivers skills training to students from the local area. The center will help with workforce requirements for infrastructure and housing in Camden, as well as large national projects such as HS2. There are some utility services and systems exposed nearby, which will act as a learning aid for students initially. And you can see that site in the second image there. And then we have the utilities operations. And this area is what most people will see on the roads near and around Euston Station. The work focuses on pipework diversions for fresh water, sewers, gas mains, and cable services. Next slide. So component one includes three key focus areas. We have the health management plan, the health risk assessment tool, and the engagement with health by design. Next slide. The health management plan is a document submitted by all contractors, and it outlines their health provisions. So specifically, it will detail how the contractor will meet the site health, safety, and well-being provisions, which occupational health and hygiene providers they'll be using, what their key hygiene risks are, and how they plan to complete assurance for the hazards. So my review focuses on the hygiene component and their annual assurance plan, ensuring they understand their high risk hazards and have a risk assessment completed for their project work. Next slide. As part of their health management plan, they can adopt this health risk assessment tool, and it would apply to all the work being undertaken by the one contractor on the work site. The aim is to identify the health hazards associated with the scope of works and the specific work areas they relate to. So here you see a screenshot of the template of the HRA. It outlines the specific health hazards and the work areas of concern, the roles exposed to these health hazards, the measures to be taken to control these hazards and to reduce the risks to allow as low as reasonably practicable, including verification and monitoring of controls. Controls must be specific to the health hazards identified and not generics. And once they complete the HRA, it will clearly identify what their hazards are and that require health surveillance and the needs for an assurance plan. Next slide. So then we have component 2, which includes 4 key focus areas. We've got an assurance checks, and then I support exposure monitoring, support with risk assessment method statements, so that's RAM reviews, and awareness and education. Next slide. So assurance involves completing regular site visits to all the areas, and these may be targeted inspections if concerns are raised regarding the risk on a specific task. Following the inspection, an email of good practice and areas for improvement and other observations is shared. I'll include pictures from the site and resources that they can share, like posters and toolbox talks. And this will also be discussed with the site contact and company health and safety representatives. Points I'll raise in the email could be like, for good observations, it'll be like, if there's a noisy task, I may talk about noise barriers or hearing protection, like controls that are good and they've included. And then for improvement, like if it's a manual handling task, I may talk about a risk assessment that they should include. And then other observations on site that I may have noticed, like for example, brooms being used on site. And so I'll discuss all these things from my site visit in an email. Next slide. The assurance section will also focus on exposure monitoring. At HS2 Houston, contractors are responsible for arranging occupational hygiene monitoring for their work. My support involves reviewing any occupational hygiene data they have collected and providing recommendations based on my analysis. And also MDJV have a dust canary, so I'll provide training on how to use hygiene equipment and support planning of hygiene surveys. I've also completed hygiene surveys for MDJV staff. The surveys focus on ensuring exposures are not exceeded and ensuring control measures are adequate. Next slide. Following site inspections or hygiene surveys, a short slide is created. It's called the Lessons Learned. And Lessons Learned slide is shared with other contractors on the site and the health and safety team at MDJV. They may use it in their health and safety meetings to show initiatives and encourage learning for everyone. You can see an example of a Lessons Learned slide here, and it gives an overview a bit on the health risks, the regulations, and recommendations or outcomes. We've had contractors on site carry sound level meters and direct reading instruments to measure dust levels around the site. These have been great ways to drive conversations and awareness on site about hazards such as noise and dust. Next slide. The third aspect of assurance is on RAMS reviews. So specifically, I'll review the risk assessments in their method statement. These will cover topics including the scope of works, including methods, control measures, the equipment they'll be using. The RAMS also includes emergency arrangements, site logistics, like locations and the facilities, and the risk assessment for the specific task. Many times the risk assessment will have not mentioned additional controls. So many of my recommendations have been around controls they could have in place. So for example, I received a RAMS on installation of temporary works by a site team in preparation for the operations. The controls only mentioned hearing protection. So they did not mention anything about establishing noise zones, signage barriers, and etc. So the feedback goes directly to the health and safety lead for the contractor involved in the work operations. And that's how change is driven. Next slide. So I also support the site with awareness and education on occupational hygiene, which includes any inquiries related to hygiene, supporting campaigns and sharing resources, and developing training materials such as this one on the right. So this one was following an assessment of a manual handling process completed by a contractor. I connected with other knowledge experts such as the site physio to complete the analysis of the operation. The key recommendation and learnings are provided to the contractor and the MPJV health and safety leads. Next slide. So component 3 has 2 key focus areas. We have the health surveillance and the drug and alcohol testing. I'll aim to collect monthly measures from contractors on their health surveillance and drug and alcohol testing data to keep track and see if they require support. So, for example, we had one contractor that was coming on board for the exhumation operations on site. They hadn't determined their health surveillance needs for their staff. So I went through the assurance process, supported them with their health management plan, their health risk assessment tool to determine which staff at MDJV Houston require health surveillance. Once they had this data, we had them connect with an occupational health service provider to complete their health surveillance. Next slide. So to track the progress of the hygiene program, I've developed this tracker. The tracker will include each component of the subsections and key focus areas. And there is a row for each contractor to note their progress in the component. This has been very useful in ensuring engagement with all the contractors involved on the project to support them in meeting their hygiene needs. Specific details have been left out due to confidentiality reasons. Next slide. And that is the hygiene program at HSC Houston. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Marvelous. Thank you. Thank you so much, Manal. I hope that was hopeful, folks, for an insight into a project, a few days a month, quite different in the way that things are structured and done compared to HPC. Hope that was helpful. So perhaps I could finish up today by just putting this slide up there. So if I hope that the presentation so far has either been food for thought or been hopefully encouragement for you to get involved in the construction sector, and also a bit of an insight as to what to expect when you're there and how it differs from other areas of occupational hygiene engagement that perhaps you're typically used to. Here's some resources. You've got the BOHS Breathe Freely website. That's obviously that's our first port of call, isn't it? The Breathe Freely website, BOHS. Then we have the ICE Designing for Health guidance for designers. A series of briefing sheets are available to you there. If you are thinking of getting involved in this area, buy this book. The ICE Manual of Health and Safety in Construction, second edition. There's some good information in there for you. And then there's a plethora of resources available as well on the Health and Construction Leadership Group. I will have undoubtedly missed several other things off this resources page. My apologies to all who are working so hard in this area. I wish I could have included you all. So that concludes our presentation today. We'd be happy to take any questions or any feedback.
Excellent. Thank you, Calvin. We do have, oh, there you go. Steve has put his hand up and it was his question I was going to read out. So Steve, do you want to come off mute there? You can have a quick chat.
Hi, Calvin.
Hi, Steve.
Thank you very much. That was excellent, you and your team.
Thank you. Overview. Yeah. Thanks to Mel and Alice. Yeah, as well.
Only wished we worked in such big, well-paying projects that were able to do things as thoroughly as this. My question was about, oh gosh, what was it? Yeah, the maturity index.
Yeah.
And the scores that you showed. I think it was Hinkley Point.
Yeah.
Do you use that as an audit? So effectively, is it your experts going in and they do the scoring, or is it more a self-assessment where the contractors fill it in?
Yeah. Various ways to skin the cat, Steve. The example I showed you there is where we went in and carried out something akin to an audit, if you like, and there's no better way of understanding how our approach was other than looking up how the BOHS high management tool works, where we nicked the idea from for all of that. Okay, so it says you gather information from the contractor. Yeah. Show me your corporate procedures. Where is the connective tissue between your corporate
yeah.
aspirations and what's going on site? How do you monitor what's, we look at that, and then we go and visit site, and putting all those things together, we come up with the scores like in that plan. Okay. Now, many thanks for asking the question, because we did that on a few occasions to HPC, and the reasonable challenge was made that this is all a bit cumbersome, really, given it's a construction site. Are there not simpler ways of doing this? And there are. And some of them include a self-scoring checklist. And I think it was on the Health and Construction Leadership Group website. I found some examples there of maturity indexes, which would be a good inspiration for anybody looking to introduce that approach. But the underlying sense we're trying to get off is what is an organization's capability and wherewithal to do health like they do safety? That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. And the glory of it, of course, is that you can send it down the supply chain as well. It helps with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Steve. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions. There were some brilliant links put in there. So thank you to everybody who was contributing and chatting back and forth while the presentations were taking place. There's nothing coming at the moment. We are just over 2 o'clock, so I don't know if you want to give it another 30 seconds for any questions, or if there are any questions kind of that people think of later in the evening, if there's an email address maybe you want to give out to send out any questions to.
Yeah. If I could take just a second, Lee, that when I put the first slide up, I said Alice Manal and Kelvin Williams, and initially I put into there plus supporting cast. All right. And what I'm thinking there is that there is so much work being done on occupational health and hygiene in construction. I mean, Steve's just been on the call doing some fantastic work with national highways, and there've been many others, too many to mention here. I wish I've got to have the time, but we're all too conscious that we're standing on the shoulders of a lot of other people's hard work and effort going on across the board. So thank you to everybody who's been engaged in the construction sector. One of the delights of working in the construction sector is that despite them coming to the game a little bit late in the day, you will rarely work in a sector where you'll find people with such an innovative, can-do, problem-solving attitude. Because they're used to doing this. There's always things coming up in construction where you've got to solve the problem in the moment. They're very, very good at it. And so if you push back with some kind of design thing or something like that, the construction folks will come up with some wonderful solutions. Trust me on this. Okay. So it's all to play for in construction. Thank you.
Excellent. Then, yeah, I'll bring the webinar to a close. Like I say, we're just over 2 o'clock now. So if you do have any questions, you can always email us at marketing@bohs.org, or if there's any email addresses in the presentations, those slides will go out with the video recording once it's been uploaded to the BOHS YouTube channel. So thank you once more from us to Kelvin, Alice and Manal, and enjoy the rest of your hopefully very sunny afternoon, and we'll see you in the next BOHS webinar.
Lovely. Thanks, folks. Bye-bye. Take care.